And tonight, we're going to hear from a lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, Joseph R. Owen, who served as a mortar section commander for Baker Company, 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division. In his book, which is called Colder Than Hell. And the book starts off with one of the best short overviews of the Korean War I've ever read, likely because it's written by a man who was there. A man named General Raymond Davis, Ray Davis, who, first of all, he was a battalion commander in World War II at the Battle of Peleliu, awarded the Navy Cross there for leading his men against overwhelming Japanese fire. And in Korea, he was awarded the Medal of Honor, as well as 2 Silver Stars, a Legion of Merit, and a Bronze Star as the commander of 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. And beyond that, he also served as the 3rd Marine Division commander in Vietnam in 1969, where he was awarded the Navy Distinguished Service Medal and 3 Republic of Vietnam Gallantry Crosses. So when he speaks, I think maybe we should listen. And I'm going to start with that foreword by General Davis in the book Colder Than Hell by Joe Owen. Twice in 1950. During the first months of the Korean War, the United States faced military catastrophe. Both situations occurred because of American errors of diplomacy and faulty intelligence, and because our military was not prepared to meet a determined enemy on the battlefield. North Korea and China were the enemies that exploited our failings. On 2 occasions that year, they caught us by surprise, launching massive attacks first against our ally, South Korea, and then against our own inadequate forces. Both times, the consequences were devastating. There were tragic numbers of casualties in the ranks of our soldiers and Marines, and American prestige worldwide was severely impaired. The surprise invasion of South Korea by North Korea with the support of Communist China and the Soviet Union was virtually invited by the United States and the South Koreans. South Korea was vulnerable. Its soldiers were ill-equipped, poorly trained, and improperly deployed. The American forces at that time, victims of Washington politics and false economies, were nearly as bad off. Following the end of World War II drawdown, they were in skeletonized formation, sadly undertrained and inadequately equipped. So there's a little warning for us today. You need, and somebody asked me that question. What's your foreign policy? Can you say it in 140 characters? Somebody asked me that on Twitter. I answered it in one word. My foreign policy is strength. This is why. Back to the book. Moreover, our Secretary of State had proclaimed to the world that the Korean Peninsula was outside the area of American vital interests. North Korea, China, and the Soviet Union read that message to mean that the United States would not defend South Korea against outside aggression. South Korea would be theirs for the taking. We now know of messages exchanged between Joseph Stalin and the North Korean president, Kim Il-sung, that explored our weakness and concluded that South Korea could be captured in 5 days. Subsequently, the North Koreans launched a sudden and massive invasion. Seoul, the North Korean capital, was quickly taken, and soon all that country was overrun except for one small pocket around the port of Busan. That pocket was formed by American troops. Unready as they were, that President Harry Truman hurried into Korea in response to the crisis. At great sacrifice, these American soldiers, with a follow-on brigade of Marines, held the Pusan perimeter long enough to allow forces to assemble for an amphibious assault on Incheon, behind the North Korean lines. We recaptured Seoul, and the North Koreans were put on the run. Fearing entrapment, they fled back across their border to the north. American and South Korean troops were joined by soldiers from other United Nations countries and pursued the aggressors deep into North Korea. Our mission was twofold: to punish the North Koreans and to block the Chinese People's Liberation Army if it threatened to enter the war. Because of a failure of intelligence, however, we were far too late to deter the Chinese. They had already positioned vast numbers of their well-trained soldiers in the mountains of North Korea. We were soon under heavy attack, fighting a numerically superior enemy in unfavorable terrain and brutally cold weather. The UN forces, predominantly American, were chased out of North Korea. At the chosen reservoir, where we were outnumbered 10-1, the Chinese generals prematurely boasted of the destruction of the 1st Marine Division. Yet the opposite happened there. Although the Marines were forced to withdraw, we destroyed several Chinese divisions as we fought our way to the sea and to escape. Our withdrawal was a successful one, but we paid a terrible price. Casualties reduced the division to nearly half its strength. The 3 rifle companies of 1st Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, which I was privileged to command, endured losses of even greater proportions. My battalion had been hastily activated in response to President Truman's urgent call to action. It was a thrown-together rifle company, a collection of regulars gathered from Marine Corps posts and stations all over the world, and reservists, mostly untrained, who were suddenly called from their homes, jobs, schools, with only a few days of training. They were embarked aboard a ship heading across the Pacific and thrown into combat. They had to learn to fight while under fire. Their saving grace was that they were led by disciplined officers and NCOs who showed them, by upfront example, how to fight like Marines. Although they suffered casualties that proper preparation would have avoided, they learned well and they hardened into fine rifle company. No North Korean or Chinese force ever stopped them from taking an objective or overcame their position. Let us do all we can to assure that no future generation of young Americans need to go to war unprepared, as were those heroes who went to Korea in 1950. And again, that is the foreword of the book, which was written by General Raymond Davis, Medal of Honor winner. And like I said, the book is written by Joseph Owen, who was Marine Corps officer.